So if you're going to drop big money on a comic, make sure that you don't necessarily need those funds for the foreseeable future. And that's really tough. That's really tough, especially if you have the cash and you see the book, you want to get it, but you have to think a little more long term than the book that's right in front of you. Reggie here, your friendly neighborhood bodybuilder and comic book collector, and I want to welcome you to another one of my videos. In this video, we are going to take some time to talk about 5 practical ways to buy big money comics. And I will tell you right now that this list is not what you think that it's going to be. So bear with me. Before I get to the list, I actually want to take a moment to acknowledge the sponsor of this video, Shortboxed. Shortboxed is the easiest and safest way to buy and sell graded comics, and there is a link down in the description. I encourage you to check it out. One of the great things about this app as a seller is that you can very quickly post your comics for sale on the app in just a couple of minutes. As a buyer, there is a wonderful inventory of comics on this app for all price points. And I definitely want to encourage you to stay tuned for a message a little bit later in this video related to my friends over at Shortboxed. With that said, let's go ahead and get to the first tip. Tip number 1 is to make sure that you won't need these funds in the near term. And what I mean by that is that if you are spending some big money to actually buy a comic, whether it's $50, $500, $5,000, $50,000 or more, make sure that you won't necessarily need those funds in the near term. And I know what you're thinking, but can't I just sell the comic and actually get my money back if I need it? You can do that, but depending upon how much money you're spending and depending upon what that book is, it may take a little time for that buyer, that next buyer that has an interest in that book and has the money to buy it, to come along. So you want to think about it. Do I need this money for the near term? If I don't need that money, then it frees up that cash for you to be able to spend it on a comic that you really want. But the last thing that you want to do is to spend that money and then next week actually need that money to pay rent or to pay bills or tuition or whatever it might be. So plan ahead, think through it, make sure that this is a good decision. Tip number 2 is make sure it's actually a good decision. And there are so many different ways to think about this. What you want to do is you want to make sure that if you are pulling the trigger on a comic, that comic is a comic that you actually want. You don't want to buy a book and then realize that you don't really want the book, that you don't really care about the character, because you might have to hold it for a while. If you're buying it for investment purposes, again, you want to think about what it is that you're doing before you actually spend your money. One of the last things that you want to do is to make a decision to buy a book that you're not really committed to, and then next week you actually see a book that you really want that you can't buy because you've tied up your resources already with another comic. And I can tell you for a fact that this has happened to me. It has happened to me. I was saving up my money many months ago to buy Incredible Hulk #1. I waited 2.5 months. I had my money set aside. I was ready to go, but I got impatient. That copy of Amazing Spider-Man issue #1 just continued to stare at me week after week after week, and I decided to pull the trigger. 2 days later or so, there was that copy of Incredible Hulk issue #1 that I now could not buy because I had already spent up my comic book reserves. And as you all know, I'm still hunting for Incredible Hulk #1, so I speak from experience. But again, you want to make sure that the decision that you are making, whether it is to buy or not buy, or to buy this book versus that book, is a good decision. And so you have to slow it down. You have to think about what it is that you're doing and then make sure that it is the right decision. Don't overpay. Do your research. Get some access to a pricing service. Make sure that you're buying the book for the right price, because you also you don't want to overpay. You just don't want to do that because you don't know what the future holds. So my tip here is to make sure that you are making a quality decision. So at this point, you might be wondering why it is that I actually created this video. Did I buy Incredible Hulk #1 and I'm having some regret? No, that is not the case. Trust me when I tell you, when I get Incredible Hulk, you guys will be the first people to know. I am doing this video because I actually had a subscriber reach out to me about 2 weeks ago, and he asked if I had a video out there that I had already created that talked about buying big money books. And as he kind of explained this idea, I kind of poo-pooed the idea, to be honest with you. I do that a lot. I kind of poo-pooed the idea. And I was like, well, the process for buying a book is the exact same, right? You save up your money, or you sell books to accumulate a certain amount of money. You go out and buy it. And it doesn't matter whether it's 500 or 5,000. But as I thought more about it, I came to the realization of what this person was actually talking about. There are maybe some mental barriers that are in place for people when it comes to buying books that cost a lot of money. A lot of us won't think about spending $5 or $50, but when you start talking about 500 or 5,000, that's when you start to consider like some things, and you start to evaluate, do I really want to do this? So it is in that spirit that this person reached out to me, and it is in that spirit that I'm creating this video for other people that might also be thinking about this very same thing of, what do I need to do? How do I need to prepare to spend large amounts of money for a comic that I really want? So to that point, the third tip is to be mentally prepared. Be mentally prepared to pull that trigger, to hand over some money for some colored pieces of paper wrapped in plastic. Like, you have to be ready for that. And I remember when I bought my very first house at the age of 21. That was one of the scariest things I had ever done, because if you've ever done it, you look at that sheet of paper where it shows the schedule of payments that you're going to make and how much you will pay at the end of 30 years. That is a very scary piece of paper. And to some degree or another, handing over large sums of money, possibly electronically, possibly in physical form, for a comic can also be a very daunting thing. So you want to be mentally prepared that after you pull that trigger, that you don't have that regret, that you're comfortable with the decision that you made, that everything is okay. And so the best way, I think, to be mentally prepared is to prepare, to think about what it is that you're doing, why you're doing it, how this book fits into something larger, maybe some goal or some nostalgia or some childhood something or another. Take some time, think about it, and be ready to actually hand that money over. Because if you're not, if you have something in your gut or in the back of your mind that makes you uncomfortable, that might be a sign that this is not a deal that you want to make or a comic that you actually want. Tip number 4 is to protect your investment. And again, it doesn't matter whether it's $500, $5,000, $500,000. Protect your investment. One of the worst things in my mind that could happen is that you have saved up a nice amount of money, or you've sold some comics to get a nice sum of money that you've now exchanged for a really awesome comic, and then something happens to that comic book. I want to encourage you to take all of the necessary precautions to protect that investment. And I don't know what that looks like for you. It could be collectible insurance. It could be a good bag and board and a poly bag. It could be moving your collection or that book to a place where it cannot get damaged by children or by water or by fire. A lot of people put their comics in safety deposit boxes. I've never done that because I want to enjoy my comics, but that is an option for some people. My point here is that whatever you are investing your hard-earned money into, take some time to think about what is the best way to protect that thing. You still want to enjoy it, but you also have to protect it as well. Tip number 5 is to pull the trigger on that book and enjoy it. One of the biggest and most important lessons that I've learned during my life is to slow down and enjoy the things that I have accomplished. I did not do that when I was younger, but now I am really starting to enjoy that aspect of life. And so if you have worked really hard to save up the money, or you've sold some books to get some money to buy a comic, and you have pulled the trigger on that book, you get it and you enjoy it. Post it up on Instagram, hang it on the wall, post it up in the Discord for Regie Collects, where we have a room that is actually set up for people to celebrate. Whatever your book is, if it's a $50 book or a more dollar book, I encourage you to take some time and enjoy that comic. If it's raw, go ahead and read that book. If it's slabbed, read it digitally or go ahead and crack it open. I don't know if you want to do that, but that's an option, right? My point is, take some time to celebrate your success because I think that that is vitally important. With that said, I am about to wrap this video up, but before I do so, I actually want to give you out there an opportunity to win a $100 credit from my friends over at Shortboxed. Every single month, Shortboxed sponsors 2 videos, and in one of those videos, we give you an opportunity to get a $100 credit simply for commenting on this video. And what I mean by that is you have to leave a substantive comment behind. So none of that first or great video. I mean, something that has a little substance to it. Leave that comment behind, and in a couple of weeks, I will randomly pick a comment from the comment section and will announce the winner during one of the Comics Today shows, which happens on Wednesday at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So go ahead and leave those comments behind. And again, don't forget to download the app. There is a link down in the description. With that said, I am going to wrap this video up. If you need to reach out to me, feel free to do so on Instagram at Regie Collects. Take care.